Joy News' Kwete Nate has more in the following report.
I have received countless information that contractors and business owners fake tax clearance for government contracts. So I set out to verify the authenticity of this claim. I began by registering a company called Basket Ports. Barely a week after the company became official, I set out to get a tax clearance certificate, even though my company had no tax record. Before we get into the detail of how I managed to get explains why a tax clearance certificate is important.
Tax clearance certificate, who holds that has complied with his or her tax obligation.
With the explanation out of the way, I approached a Ghana Revenue Authority staff who worked with another tax officer at the Agbogloshi GRA office and was covering 3 years. The certificate reads, "Provisionally not liable to tax, deposit 500 cedis. This should help the investigative team to secure a government contract with ease."
They need a tax certificate that has a history that I've done some job, than a zero tax certificate. Would I have to pay all at once, or I can make? And if I pay, how long will it take for me to?
Let time it come.
Then maybe
For
next
now,
week.
I'll send it. I'll send it. The office, I'll send it to them. So
Then maybe next week
at
I'll
least
bring
by
the money.
Monday or Tuesday to be ready.
Okay. Then
It
maybe.
will all depend on you.
The certificate was prepared within 3 days.
Baby, I made it back on. Only certificate.
If that wasn't the case, 1,000 CDs should cater for your work. The right document we need to work will require you give us about 1,500.
So let's see Tuesday. So Tuesday I would have to come.
Oh, you don't need to come. If it's ready, you can memo it to me.
Okay, no problem.
Head of the Domestic Tax Office, Edward Chamra, says the practice is fraudulent. He explains why.
If it's a new company cannot. So if you have a clearance certificate for a new company, which is indicating that the company has been paying taxes for previous 3 years, it's an indication of a fraudulent tax clearance certificate.
Preliminary investigations by the GRA reveal the tax detail of tax clearance are genuine, but another fact is that they were forged. The head of the Domestic Tax Office says they will investigate further to establish the details of the individuals behind the act.
We will be happy to investigate to find out how this tax clearance certificate was issued to the company. And if it's found out that it was done fraudulently, we will use the necessary sanctions to deal with the taxpayer and the tax office or the officer who issued the certificate.
So although I did not qualify for a tax clearance certificate, some GRA staff have helped me circumvent the system and have put me in a good light to bid for a government contract.
And other problem too is that now because we are short of certificates,
Okay.
but some of the offices, they have it. Those who work on that schedule.
Okay.
It is clear, beating the system in Ghana comes at a price. So what is your price tag? Kwete Nate's reports for Joy News.
Your morning radio.
All right. So you can actually watch the piece on Facebook and our YouTube pages. You can go to the Joy Facebook and YouTube pages right now and watch the piece that has just been played to you. Kwete, what triggered this expose?
I had complaints from some businesses about how some GRA officials were bending the rules in their dealings with them. So I was told I could easily get a tax clearance certificate to bid for contract by paying more than is required. There were a number of options I was told I could explore, and one of them was using an existing company that was dormant, but I didn't want to create issues for any establishment, so I decided to establish a phony company which I didn't use my real name. The details there weren't, accurate. And this company was barely a week old. I walked to the GRA offices where I met this tax official who agreed to aid me to compromise the system. My cover story was that I had landed a government contract and I needed a tax clearance certificate, which shows that I've been doing business for some years now. And I also needed them to make their document genuine to pass off, to pass off, to whichever institution I present it to.
But how did you manage to secure the tax clearance certificate and also VAT documents?
The GRE staff told me her office had a strict system, making it difficult for her to get one from where she works. But because it's a network, she told me she would get the tax clearance certificate from another office, which is the Agbogboloshi office. So she told me that I had to pay 1,000 cedis for the tax clearance certificate and pay an additional 500 cedis for the VAT. And in less than 3 days, Mamabi, I had my tax clearance certificate for this company.
A company that was just a week old, barely.
Yeah.
Interesting. But what is also interesting is the fact that you couldn't do this in this particular GRA office where she originally works.
Exactly.
But she had to take you to a different office where she could easily go through the process illegally.
She actually worked on it, on her own. I wasn't part of the process. I only had to pay the money. So pay 1,005 and the money will do the work.
For something that costs how much?
So the tax clearance certificate, I understand, cost 1 cedi. And the money they paid to the consolidated fund was 500 cedis, which they indicated on the tax clearance certificate they provided me with.
You've been talking to the GRA itself. What's been their response?
So I spoke with the head of the Domestic Tax Revenue Division of the GRA, Mr. Edward Jamra. He indicated that they will investigate the issue to establish how the tax clearance certificate was issued, and if it found out that it was done fraudulently, sanctions would be applied to the tax officer and the company.
Let's get onto the phone lines and speak to Mr. Joe Winful. He's a board chairman of the Internal Audit Agency. Good morning to you, sir. Mr. Joseph Winful, thanks a lot for your time.
Good morning. And you're most welcome, yes.
Great. First of all, what's your sense of what you've heard?
Well, it's not surprising so far as I'm concerned. We've seen loads and loads of this sort of behavior. But unfortunately, there must be laid down processes and procedures. And within these procedures, you're going to have what we call the checks and balances, or the controls that should come into play. You also, the ultimate authority for the issuance of such a certificate should be from a fairly senior official who is to be held accountable for all this. So there's no way that he or she, the supervisor can overlook something like this. Because to sign the certificate, he or she will have to go through the processes that are laid down, which includes the control aspects. So this is just adherence to compliance rules and ignoring the internal controls that have been put in place. If there was the element of what we call the personal benefit, that is, he pays 500 into the government coffers and pockets 1,000 and issues, a receipt. I'm wondering what the amount stated on the receipt that was issued, because if he stays the whole amount on the receipt, then that should be what should go into the government chest, because the receipts come in duplicate or triplicate, and then you're going to have the, the book copy that can be used in checking these. So this was more like a bit of a breakdown in, the control systems that are supposed to be in place. I said I wasn't surprised because, the issue of permits, the issue of licenses, the issue of, any of these authorized, documents has its own weaknesses. And the weaknesses are the absence of the control mechanisms that has got to be put in place. So the GRA should easily investigate this, it's straightforward, and take the corrective action. A lot of the time, is the corrective action, which means that you are applying the sanctions that should be applied to the officials who are caught in this web. The absence of the compliance, the absence of the punitive measures that are supposed to take place, is what encourages others or the continuation of such practices. This is a human institution. You're going to have some bad luck. But that means you've got to be also strict with your supervision and, attitude to your responsibilities and so on. So I see this as something that the GRA, immediately it was reported, should be able to investigate and take the corrective action. As you're well aware, it's easier said than done when you come to take some of these punitive measures because of our environmental idiosyncrasies when it comes to culture and social effect. How many institutions, especially in the government institutions, that end up with supervisors appraising their staff and giving them all satisfactory when they are not delivering anything? Is because we tend to, think that if you punish someone legitimately, then you are a bad person. And everybody wants to be seen as being very good and so on. So maybe the control should have, included in it some of these are behaviors and, idiosyncrasies so that we can minimize these flaws. And as a matter of interest, they are saying all that I'm hearing is that, to enable a government contract to be, obtained. So, but the funny thing is, the government, the one who is, inviting, proposals for such a contract, there should be some laid down procedures which will be able to verify the background of these companies. So you see that it's not only maybe the GRA, but the other institutions are equally, at fault. So we've got to tackle this holistically. And luckily, we are undertaking restructuring at the internal audit, with the new Director General. And I think he's going to be looking at a lot of these. There's got to be some, internal audit unit or the function within GRA. I know they are with the MDAs and MMDAs, but those are going to be strengthened. But there again, even the internal audit has not been as effective, because of certain legislative processes that will have to are being reviewed. So really, Mamavi, I'm not too surprised, but we've got to tackle all these because, the amount, as I heard you refer to, the amount has been paltry. Yes, it is. But if we don't block the holes, then we're going to be entering into bigger amounts. And I'm sure this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there must be a lot of issues with our systems and procedures in practice, not what has been written down on paper.
Mr. Winford, the fact that you're not surprised, And the fact that these administrative procedures are breached, possibly some criminality also coming in this, and the fact that it's been going on and we haven't been able to bridge the gap or eliminate this, that's of great concern.
It is of great concern. I mean, look, my own, belief is that if we tackle, and ensure that we have effective revenue mobilization, which includes blocking a lot of these holes and improving on our systems and the rest of it, and ensuring effective compliance, we'll be able to raise the domestic revenue to such an extent that it will reflect in lowering of our debts and so on and so forth. So it has, implications for our own development and growth. The question is, why are we not doing that and it's being in place? I mean, we have sometimes, I sit back and I smile when a lot of the politicians are blamed. They are saying, it's possible. I don't think it's, politicians alone. You have government officials who are personally benefiting from some of these, ills that has got to be tackled. But what I am saying, that is our weaknesses in ensuring, corrective measures being taken and the punitive measures being extended to those who actually commit these crimes. You've been reading about the Auditor General's report, and you've been hearing, Public Accounts Committee commenting on them and so on. It's become some sort of a ritual that we listen to it, we exhibit our shocks and, displeasures at some of these, and after a week, maybe the media will have to continue hammering on this continuously and not letting go when something happens. But a lot of people and citizens believe that, this is a one-week wonder after it's been on the news and so on. Some exciting, event will come up, and then all of a sudden we've forgotten that. So it's painful, yes. And the repercussions are that we are messing up our own development, and this is for all of us, not only the politician and the civil servant and the senior public servant who actually is the one that executes a lot of these policies, but even the citizens, I mean, and every other Ghanaian, who wants to assist or who needs to assist with the development of the with the country, will have to change the attitude. We all have to change our attitude. We have to look at Ghana first. We have to introduce an element of patriotism in our behaviors and the rest of it. But it looks as if there's complete absence of all that, and so maybe if we take this incident as a wake-up call, although we've had many wake-up calls, if we take it as another wake-up call and say that, look, we're not going to allow this to be going on. Something must be done, and then maybe we'll be on the right path. I sympathize with the head of domestic tax, but he has a role to play, and he has massive responsibility. That is why we are saying head of domestic tax. I mean, he's got to investigate that, and he's got to be intolerant of such behavior. We've got to be a bit hard and so on. I know we'll be told that we have to have a human face and the rest of it. But Mama Bia can assure you that taking on effective development roles doesn't come that, easily, and it's not painless. It's going to be painful, but we have to tackle it if we want to move this country forward.
Great. Just finally, sir, can we be confident in the system that this can be traced down to the person who finally signed off the certificate?
Oh, it should be. It should be. It should be. It means that we have to track it. We have to look at the paper flow. That you can chart this from the beginning. The applicant and so on, because it's a human being who signed the certificate. It's somebody. There must be a file which has been opened to enable this certificate to be processed. So, in the file, you're going to be able to read the communication or the memos or the authorizations and so on. You're going to see even the fictitious documents that might have been initially submitted to justify, the issuance of this certificate and so on. So yes, it can be traced easily. And I think GRA should have competent professionals to be able to do this.
I know I said finally, but what does this piece of work, how does this piece of work help the system? Because there's also a very important thing that was said in this piece by Kwete Nate, where there was the suggestion that you can use dormant companies to do this. He just chose the other option of forming a separate company. This is broad. This is just a small aspect that has been uncovered.
That's right. That's right. And you are right. When you are putting in systems and so on, I mean, the systems themselves will have to be, you have to embody into the system's controls. And the controls are what the layperson will refer to as the checks and balances. So when that happens, ineffective ones or the non-applicable ones, before it gets to even the next stage, it's just like, is it, headed by the company's name? Yeah. If yes, move it to the next stage. If no, it's rejected because you don't even know, the company you are referring to. Then it moves to the next stage and so on through points that you're going to be checking up. So you might not have only one officer dealing with this. Maybe there's going to be the receipt of the application that they have to process it by asking for the particulars of, the applicant. Is there a reference point? That sort of thing. So these are some of the processes that could be employed. And DRA, I'm sure, must have their, procedures properly documented that will have to be followed. And maybe I was telling you that I don't think this is a GRA issue only. I think it's a bit more widespread. That is why I said initially that in, institutions that have to deal with issuing of licenses, permits, what have you, most of them, I mean, if you were to go into them, you'll realize that, we are losing a lot. And we've got to tackle them, and dispassionately. And I will also appeal to the media that don't let these cases become what we refer to as the 1-night-day wonder, because it will not be, pushed forward after airing it once or twice and so on. Let us remind ourselves. Let us do more investigative reporting. Let us bring out some of the the unacceptable behaviors and the infractions that go on all over the place and so on. And it will be good for all of us, And I'm glad that at least we are making a start at it. And maybe also Ghanaians will have to get into the habit of, shrinking away. I mean, you hear a lot when something happens and somebody has information. You say, oh, I'm not going to mention names. As for me, I don't want my name to be mentioned. But whose name should be mentioned? We are not able to bring the facts, with names and actual infringement that occurred with dates and so on to enable investigators or those charged with providing oversight, to come up with the facts so that they can take action or prosecute them. How many officials who have contributed to infringement in the Auditor General's report have been prosecuted, and do we hear of them, and the rest of it? We don't. How many MDAs and so on have not, have not refused, but been unable to submit the required reports, and it's been verified, and they've been sanctioned if there are faults in it. How many? Unless we don't hear of them, or the media is not interested in them. So, Mama, we have a lot of work to do, and it's for all of us.
All right.
I think all of us will need to be citizens and not spectators.
Thank you very much, sir, for your thoughts. And by the way, Kwete got 1 cedi receipts for the 1,500 that he paid. But thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. And that's board chairman of the Internal Audit Agency, Mr. Joseph Winfield. Just some quick thoughts from Adam Senano, co-chair of the Citizen Movement Against Corruption. Adam, good morning. Your
Good
reaction
morning.
to this latest investigative piece?
Yes, I have.
What's your reaction, sir? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that essentially the internal monitoring systems of GRA just need to be strengthened, because you're always going to have individuals in the population who will not stick to the rules. The question is, do we have the systems in place and the sanction mechanisms to ensure that there is such a high risk to you and your job and what happens to you if you decide to go down this route that you would not even attempt it? And so I think the question is whether they are strong enough monitoring systems, whether they are working at the moment. And probably that's a follow-up that Kwetinate could do to check. Do they have very strong deterrent internal systems? By the way, whose 1,500 was that?
We have to ask Kwete. How soon do you expect, though, that the GRA will be through with these investigations?
The GRA tends to be it's a huge organization, but they have departments. This is something that I'm sure if they wanted to do an investigation, within 4 weeks, they could give you feedback on what exactly transpired. But clearly, we are developing a subculture where it's like, I'm helping my friend. In fact, the demeanor of the lady was a sense in which you start wondering whether you shouldn't feel sad for her. It's like, I'm helping my brother. I don't know who went there, but gradually we are, in terms of our value systems, we seem to think that, look, we can just look at it from the perspective that I'm doing my bit to help somebody. It's a subculture thing we need to take up as a society and deal with frontally and say these are not the kind of things we want to promote.
Well, Adam, we'll leave it here and pick up after the GRA investigation. Thank you very much for joining us. Adam Senano, co-chair of the Citizen Movement Against Corruption. Raymond is here. Ray, hopefully the investigation would be speedily.
I guess when I hear these stories and how we are plundering our own resources and not following simple rules and regulations, I mean, listen, assuming this is what people go through all the time, they end up getting government contracts, they end up doing whatever they want with it, they end up not having a good history, and there's a reason why your tax clearance is important. And let's not forget, if they're able to sidestep procedures to get you a tax clearance, they can actually prevent the state from getting the amount of money required in here.
Absolutely.
I have just early on referenced the fact that when we put the amount of money we have in our kitty together, we plan for the year 2021. Interest payments and compensation alone is taking out a chunk of the money. We have struggled over the years to collect enough money, and we have talked about widening tax net, and there will be more people in GRSS. It will chase virtually everybody in every corner, professionals and all of that. If the people at the Revenue Authority are not decent people, who are proper tax collectors, whose image is to get money for the state, we would be pouring water into one of those woven baskets from Akachi, and it will not work. it will not work because we are not serious with fixing the problem. I expect interdictions, I expect supervisory people to be answering questions, and I expect a review of the entire system after this, not just a promise to investigate, which ends up being, well, not so much money is being involved, so we can let a person have their job. If that system continues, we will not be building a better state for anybody.
Absolutely. So the GRA says that it is investigating this. We hope that what Kwete has unraveled will help them unravel bigger things happening at the GRA, because in the end, we want to encourage people to pay taxes. But if we hear that the tax collectors within their ranks, this is happening, then it's also not encouraging enough for those of us who are paying the taxes, is it? When we come back, we would get your reactions to this as well. If you've been listening, you can also go to the Joy 997 Facebook and YouTube pages and watch the video version of this piece that we've been discussing. And then you join us if you have some experiences. You're free to share with us, and then your reaction to what you've heard as well. Also on our table, today is October 11. It is marked as the International Day of the Girl Child. It's an annual and internationally recognized observance that empowers girls and amplifies their voices. This year's celebration is under the theme Digital Generation, Our Generation. We have a conversation on this. Stay with us.
What would you do if you have the choice to do anything in life? Build your dream house, take very good care of your family, and plan for a comfortable retirement. Plan a befitting funeral for your loved ones when they depart. How would you live if you knew there was a friend waiting to support you on all of your life's choices?
You have such a friend in Glyco Life Insurance. Glyco Life has all the plans to meet your life's needs. Your child's education, your life savings, your mortgage, funerals, redundancy, and your retirement, and takes the burden off your shoulders. So go ahead and live life to the fullest today with Glyco Life Insurance plans. And remember that all our policies are hedged against inflation. Talk to Glyco Life on 0302 218 500 or 246 142. Also visit our website at www.glycolife.com or any of our branches nationwide for more information.
Glycolife, we cushion you for life.
Glyco, we cushion you for life.
Putting up or replacing a roof is not just laying